You don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay. So then,
how would you define belief? Something you say?
Okay, so I explain, like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your life.
Don't be so sure.
In this video, we look at a Jubilee circular debate between Jordan Peterson and 20 atheists. And I'm going to focus on Jordan Peterson confronting two people in particular. Jordan Peterson, of course, a controversial character of whom I am sure you have heard. Why don't we watch this together? I'm going to have some opinions, and then I want to know what you think in the comments.
How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I guess since you said morality and purpose cannot be found in science, it would just depend on like what you're referencing. If you're saying a description of your psychological preferences would be considered within science, sure. But I don't think that you have to say that it comes from science in order to be like an atheist. As an agnostic atheist, I don't know if God exists and I don't believe that a God exists. And the only ones that I would really reject would be like the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, perfect notion of God that plenty of Christians like prescribe themselves. So I guess
how is that relevant to this claim?
You're basing a position of morality and purpose in some like notion of God that isn't the same type of notion of God that typical Christians would prescribe. Your notion of God is
what typical Christians?
Yeah, typically when I talk to Christians, they say that they believe in an all-knowing.
How about Cardinal Newman, who defined God as conscience? He's a major influence on all of Catholic social theory. How about that Christian?
Sure. So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean when you say you believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
All right. So if you believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it and you die for it. That's what I mean by that. It isn't something that you say. It isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's the presupposition of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay, so then,
how would you define belief? Something you say?
Okay, so I explain, like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your life?
Don't be so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
How much do you know about me? I didn't lie to save my career. I didn't lie to save my clinical practice.
Would you lie to like save your children, your mom, your dad?
I don't think lying would save them.
Can there ever be a circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
I'll give you an example. If you're like in like Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's like Jewish people in your attic and you're trying to protect them,
example.
Would you lie to like the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation to begin with. It's a hypothetical, and it's not answerable.
Hypotheticals?
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like that because it's far. Look. Don't play games.
I'm not playing games. I'm just asking
you are. If you present me with an intractable moral choice that's stripped of context and you back me into a corner, you're playing game. I just told you I would do everything that I could to make sure that I'm never in that situation. By the time you've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Being born in Nazi Germany and trying to protect people that you care about, like there could be a Jewish friend that you have and you want to protect them.
I think you should just give up on that line of questioning.
Give up on just like trying to clarify your position? Because you don't like, are you like uncomfortable with me asking this question? It's just a basic hypothetical. Like I could ask you.
It's just a basic hypothetical where you put Jews' lives at stake in Nazi Germany. That's just a basic hypothetical.
Obviously you would lie in that scenario to save their life, but you're like not trying to answer this question for some reason.
I just told you why.
Are you anti-fascist? Like, so you're
why
anti-fascist?
Are you asking that?
I was just asking, just clarifying. But like, okay, again, you're not answering this hypothetical because you know it shows that you clearly would lie to save someone's life.
I'm answering it in a manner you don't find acceptable.
Obviously, because I care about truth.
I wouldn't be in that scenario.
Obviously, right? Logically, because that's already happened. Like that's in the past. You don't have a time travel device. We're bringing this logical hypothetical up to show you that in some circumstances that do happen within the real world, you would lie to save people's lives. So your definition of truth isn't actually how we're typically using it. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to muddy the waters when I ask you, like, do you believe this? Do you think this to be true? So you don't actually have to answer the questions. And plenty of Christians don't like that because they clearly see that you don't really like want to be associated with Christianity.
I can imagine that I was in a situation where the best I could do as a consequence of my previous mistakes was to tell the least amount of lie I could manage. But that would likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
So you would lie to save someone's life. So again, you do believe it to be true in that circumstance, even though you like lied in that scenario. So
not without the context that I put it in.
You were not willing to die for it. You were not willing to let other people die for it. So that's not what you see to be true then, seemingly.
You're doing exactly what I said you were doing at the beginning of the conversation. You're generating an impossible, restricted, hypothetical with no precursors to back me into a corner.
How is it possible? Is there something contradictory about it? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
One of the things that's really interesting to me in looking at two different pieces of this video where Jordan Peterson talks to two different atheists, debates them, is that Jordan Peterson's style and manner changes so drastically in between the two. With that former person, Jordan Peterson was really, it was like a confrontational match. And I'm not saying Jordan Peterson brought all this, and rather I'm saying Jordan Peterson mirrored what was being pushed at him. So it was a little bit of a wrestling match that first time to sort of see who could kind of out mentally maneuver the other in terms of, well, what does that mean? And I don't know, what are you saying? Coming up, see how this is different, because the woman that he debates next brings a very different energy.
My next claim is that everybody worships something, including atheists, even though they might not know it.
Hi.
Good work.
Thank you.
Hi there.
I'm Zena. So I want to start off with like defining terms.
Yep.
How do you define worship?
Prioritize.
Prioritize. So almost like having a preference over something rather than the
It's a
other.
hierarchy of preferences.
Yeah.
And you use it to direct your attention.
Right.
So whatever you're attending to, you're worshiping.
Right. So I've kind of become a little bit familiar with your idea of like this value-laden hierarchy.
Yeah.
Right. And you kind of posit that at the bottom of this hierarchy, or you call it top or bottom, I
Yeah,
suppose.
right.
At the bottom of this hierarchy, this foundational priority in your life is going to be considered God. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
Yes.
Right. I'm trying to imagine a situation in which could there be that someone has a priority at their foundation that is different from someone else's?
Oh, definitely.
Right. So we can have different conceptions of God.
That's why we fight.
Right. So essentially, there's not one God, but there are multiple gods, and these gods exist in some realm of truth. It's true that this person has one God, and it exists.
Yeah, probably better to think about it as multiple values, but that there's a hierarchy of values with something at the bottom.
Right. But at the
Or
bottom is
top.
God, and there
That's
are
a definition, yeah.
Yeah. So at the bottom is God, and there can be multiple people with different conceptions of God, and they're each valid in being called God. So there are multiple gods that exist.
It depends on what you mean by valid. So far, so good, but it depends on what you mean by valid, because I would say that some foundational conceptions don't play out when they're implemented. So if you put the wrong thing at the foundation, you end up in hell, for example. That's what happens in totalitarian states.
Okay.
Yeah?
So you're saying
So they're not all equal. Like, all foundational principles are not equal, even though they might be equally foundational. Right?
So what makes one kind of foundational tenet like better than another one?
That's an excellent question. Iterability. Imagine that you play a game with someone and you're a kid, and it's fun. So then you play again and again and again.
So
Well, then
repetition.
It's playability across multiple iterations. So then you have a friend, and a friend is better than having a game.
So-
So that's one. Breadth of application is another. So if it's just for me now, it's not as good as something that would be benefit to both of us across time.
Right. So we're explaining like characteristics that can be applied to like these types of like foundational values. But why is it that this iterability makes it better? And what does better mean?
Well, one hallmark of better is likely to be selected voluntarily. So it's invitational.
Another descriptive kind of quality. So we're talking about characteristics that in some type of system with a goal, an output being like, we could maybe say happiness, right? Or some type of
Harmony.
Harmony,
Yeah,
right?
that's better. Not happiness precisely, because it's too short term.
Exactly. So as someone who is an atheist, right, I can explain that within a system, there are things that we can see as better or worse to meet this goal or meet this output. But what we're interested in, though, is what could make these things, regardless of any system, right?
Well, imagine that you set up a system and you implement it, and it produces the opposite results to which you intend. Oh, yeah, that's not a good system.
Exactly.
Right. So the foundational principles are lacking, because when you implement them, the game degenerates instead of moving towards the aim.
Right.
Okay,
So we're talking about within a system. When we talk about something being moral, right, just absolutely moral, it means that without a system, right, this thing is simply moral with no reason. Like, stance independent, this thing is good. So I'm trying to figure out if such thing can exist. And if so, do you believe that these things are moral in of themselves, like self-evidently moral, or are they moral in accordance with the system?
I can't define them any more accurately than I already did, really.
Okay. In regards to morality, when we talk about the divine, when we talk about God and religion, these moral tenets and religion, right, and God exist as good because it is God, right? So it's self-evident, right? Without any kind of goal or output, this thing is good. So I want to figure out how...
There's an element of that that's true. So, for example, in the story of Job, Job is unfairly tortured in consequence of a bet between God and Satan. So Job is emblematic of someone who's being hurt for no apparent reason. Okay, so Job's response to that is that he refuses to lose faith in himself, and he refuses to lose faith in the ultimate goodness of being. Okay, and those are axiomatic decisions. They're not exactly evidence dependent, because he is suffering. There's an arbitrariness in that that's reminiscent of what you claim.
So do you see what Jordan Peterson is doing here? Like, his point isn't clear. It's not like he's made a point that I go, wow, that is a good point. He is meeting her energy, and what he is trying to do is build this sort of convincing thing that's like, Here's my status is that I'm higher and smarter than you, but you're coming at it with some good points. Good. That's good. And I am trying to sort of maneuver around that. I'm reinforcing some pieces of what you were saying to show you that I am right, and so that we're on the same team, and ultimately that I'm right. Right? It's really insidious, and I'm not even sure how much Jordan Peterson is aware or doing that consciously. As much as it feels like a narcissistic quality to me, where what he's trying to get is buy into all of this, that we're on the same team, that we agree that I'm right, that I'm higher status, but that we're on the same team, and now you are a supporter of mine.
So I'm essentially trying to figure out, do you believe that something can be good, like stance independently, something that can be good?
I don't know what you mean by stance independent.
Okay, so
you mean independent of people?
Independent of people. We can use that, or more so, I want to be more specific. Something that can be good, right, regardless of any end goal. It's just good.
No, I think good is tied up with goal.
Goal, okay. I completely agree. So, in a sense, this is why...
That's why the religious goal in Christianity is the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. It's goal dependent.
Okay, right.
So it's in reference to a goal.
So,
or the goal would be the imitation of Christ.
Someone's goal, right, can be something that doesn't encompass being in congruence with God or being with God.
No, the thing that they want to be in congruence.
Oh, right, okay.
That's right. That's right. That's good. That's great. The thing they want to be in congruence with is fundamentally equivalent to their God.
So what makes someone a Christian and what makes someone not a Christian? What makes, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because
that's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah, well, probably the deepest answer to that is willingness to shoulder your cross voluntarily and trudge uphill regardless of circumstances.
Okay, so someone can have a God, because in your definition, your first preference, that is God, right? So someone can believe in God, right? And not be a Christian, right?
Yeah, well, there's a statement that Christ makes in the Gospels. He says, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven.
So not that they're even saying that they believe in God, but they just...
I know, but that's why I'm saying this to you, is that Christ himself points out that there's a difference between people who say they believe and people who act it out. And the fundamental issue is the action rather than the stated belief.
But he also says that, to be saved, right, you must believe God has died for your sins, or that God has resurrected in some way. So it's like, I don't necessarily think that we can take from the Bible and say that, like, acting in accordance with God necessarily means, or acting in accordance with, the principles of God, like, for example, sacrifice, like you talk about, means that you are Christian. I don't see how you can get that from that interpretation and then, kind of justify it as the truth.
I don't think that the fact that you sacrifice is sufficient to make you Christian.
So can we repeat once again what you believe makes someone Christian?
There's many things, but one of the most fundamental is that you believe that the cosmos itself is founded on the principle of voluntary self-sacrifice. Best founded. Let me offer you a contrary example. So I could assume that power rules. And so that my assumption would be, if I can make you do it, I win. Right? And I can found a whole society on that. And that happens a lot, by the way. And that's also how societies tend to degenerate. And so that would be a society that was founded on the principle that you get to sacrifice and I don't have to. Right? Now, the contrary to that would be something like, you give up voluntarily and with courage all the things you need to situate yourself properly in relationship to the future and other people. Right. So then there's a harmony. That's why I talked about harmony earlier.
So you navigate your life, right, in accordance kind of to this principle of self-sacrifice. Can I say it in that way?
Yes, you can definitely say it that way. That's exactly right. And navigate is the right term.
So someone does not have to have any awareness of Christ, of the story of Jesus, but let's say 60% of their actions, right, or more, whatever kind of metric you want to use, are in line with this self-sacrifice.
So the Christian thinkers of the Middle Ages dealt exactly with that problem when they were talking about the pre-Christian philosophers, for example. And they noted the similarity, let's say, between pre-Christian Greek thought and later Christian thought, and presumed that there were moral actors outside the Christian domain.
Right. So is that person Christian, though? Is that person Christian?
Well, to some degree, again, that's a matter of definition, because they wouldn't be proclaiming Christian propositions, but they're acting out the pattern. Right. So you imagine that full Christianity would involve a dozen things, and you can imagine someone who knows nothing of Christianity, say, acting out 8 of them.
Right.
So then they'd be 8/12 Christian or something like that.
Christian. Well, but to be like a full Christian, how can someone say I am Christian? Like I am Christian, not 8/12, but Christian.
Well, I hesitate to do that personally, because I think it's the kind of goal that you be very careful about proclaiming. The technical.
But belief is not necessarily, to be mostly Christian, belief is not necessary. 8/12s or, right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by belief. See, because I would say that acting out the pattern is the deepest form of belief. Now, you could add to that what you say. So, maybe in the optimal situation, how you act and what you imagine and what you say, they're the same. Right? But you could imagine a hypocrite who says all sorts of wonderful things and does nothing, and you could imagine another person who acts in a very positive manner but proclaims nothing.
So what I'm kind of seeing is like a descriptive, a really early comprehensive but descriptive analysis of human action, human thought, and by which we can characterize people and put people in boxes. But I don't see
Why in boxes?
like, when I say in boxes, I mean like I can categorize you based on your actions, not based on necessarily what you say, but based on your actions that you are more so or less so Christian, right? Things like that, right? So we can categorize people as Christian.
Well, I would say more or less voluntarily self-sacrificing.
But that's also what we came to, though, is that someone can be like 60% or 70% Christian based on simply just acting in that way.
Yeah, Richard Dawkins is like that.
I watched that debate.
Pause there. We've been voted out by the majority.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Really, very thoughtful.
And there it is again, right? So Jordan Peterson approves. Very good. You're good. That was good. Because you didn't challenge me, right? You didn't oppose me. You were working with me to try and, I did my flim flam and you didn't become oppositional to it. So we made some progress here. I feel like there's hope for you to become one of my it's really insidious. It's really insidious, but maybe I'm wrong. Like, tell me what you think. Am I misjudging Jordan Peterson? Am I underestimating Jordan Peterson? Am I misreading Jordan Peterson? Do you think that Jordan Peterson is fundamentally a well-intentioned person who is just trying to get people to understand and live better lives? Or is Jordan Peterson a narcissist? Is Jordan Peterson a huckster, a megalomaniac? Like, I'm not sure that I am right, actually. He sets off a lot of alarms for me. And not just when he's acting bonkers, but when he's defending the right, I really see it. And when he's on a Joe Rogan or when Jordan Peterson is talking to somebody that has more specifically right-leaning tendencies, there's this kind of smug mirroring that he does with them that I think that to me is the truest Jordan Peterson. Is this, I'm going to reflect back at you what I'm getting from you. And that to me undermines any of the assertions that he makes. More than anything else, what I want to see is, what I see in Jordan Peterson is that he wants to be validated. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments.